How would you feel if a court officer appeared at your door the day after your child's birthday party, with a thick envelope addressed to your husband? Why did my husband ask for a DNA test after seeing my ex at the party? And what did he do when the results arrived? This is how my life unraveled after one innocent lie. I'm Emily Valeska, 33 years old, and I work as an insurance underwriter in downtown Portland. My husband, Nathaniel Harper, everyone calls him Nate, is 35 and works as an IT consultant. We've been married for 7 years, and our daughter Ava just turned 5. Until last month, I thought I had the perfect life. I thought I could manage everything, keep everyone happy, and maintain the image of our perfect little family. I was wrong. The morning of Ava's 5th birthday party, I stood in our kitchen, arranging pink and purple balloons, feeling genuinely excited. Our backyard looked perfect, streamers hanging from the oak tree, a bouncy castle positioned on the grass, and tables covered with princess-themed decorations. I'd spent weeks planning this party, determined to give Ava the celebration she deserved. "Mummy, when are my friends coming?" Ava bounced into the kitchen wearing her sparkly princess dress, her dark curls bouncing around her shoulders. "In 2 hours, sweetheart. Are you excited?" I knelt down to adjust her tiara, smiling at her bright green eyes. She looked so much like me at that age, though everyone always said she had my father's stubborn chin. Nate walked in, carrying folding chairs from the garage, his brown hair slightly messy from the morning's setup work. "The backyard's ready. I just need to set up the sound system for the music." "Perfect. Thank you, honey." I kissed his cheek, genuinely grateful. Nate always helped with everything, never complained about the work or the expense. He was a good father, a reliable husband. Sometimes I wondered if that was enough. The first guests started arriving at 2 o'clock. My sister Samantha came early with her boyfriend, carrying a huge gift bag and wearing a bright smile. "Emily, this looks amazing. You've outdone yourself." "Thanks, Sam. I wanted everything to be perfect for her." I hugged my younger sister, appreciating her support. Sam always understood me, always took my side when things got complicated. Nate's mother, Linda, arrived with his father, carrying a carefully wrapped present and wearing her usual polite but slightly strained smile. Linda had never quite warmed up to me, though she tried to hide it for Nate's sake. She kissed Ava's forehead and complimented the decorations, but I could see her scanning the crowd with sharp eyes. More families arrived, Ava's classmates with their parents, our neighbors, a few of my co-workers. The party was in full swing when I heard a familiar voice calling my name. "Emily, there's the birthday girl's mum." I turned to see Owen Sutter walking through our back gate, carrying a large gift box and wearing that easy smile that had always made my heart skip a beat. Owen was my ex-boyfriend from college, the one who got away before I met Nate. He'd moved back to Portland 2 years ago and opened a fitness studio downtown. We'd reconnected on social media, started texting occasionally, meeting for coffee when our schedules aligned. "Owen, I'm so glad you could make it." I walked over to greet him, very aware that several people were watching. "Ava will be thrilled to see you." "Wouldn't miss it. Where's the birthday princess?" Owen's green eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. He looked good, really good. The years had been kind to him. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his shoulders broader than I remembered from our college days. "Uncle Owen!" Ava came running over, throwing her arms around his legs. Owen had always been good with kids, and Ava adored him. He'd been to a few family barbecues over the past year, always bringing thoughtful gifts and paying attention to her stories. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I brought you something special." Owen handed her the gift box, and she squealed with delight. I glanced around and noticed Nate standing by the sound system, watching us with a confused expression. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. I felt a flutter of anxiety in my stomach. "Owen, you remember my husband Nate, right?" I called out, trying to keep my voice light and casual. "Of course. Good to see you again, Nate. Owen walked over with his hand extended, but Nate's handshake was brief and cold. I didn't realize you were coming, Nate said quietly, his eyes moving between Owen and me. Last-minute addition, I said quickly. I mentioned the party when we ran into each other at the grocery store last week. Owen's practically family at this point, right? I laughed, but it sounded forced even to my own ears. Nate's expression didn't change. Can I talk to you for a minute? Inside. My stomach dropped, but I kept smiling. Actually, I need to help serve the cake soon. Can it wait? Emily. Nate's voice was quiet but firm. Inside. Now. I followed him into the kitchen, my heart pounding. Through the window, I could see Owen talking to some of the other parents, perfectly at ease. Ava was showing off her new toy to her friends. What's going on? Nate asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Why is your ex-boyfriend at our daughter's birthday party? He's not my ex-boyfriend, Nate. That was 10 years ago. He's a friend now, that's all. I opened the refrigerator and pretended to check on the cake, avoiding his eyes. I thought you'd gotten past this jealousy thing. Jealousy thing? Nate's voice rose slightly. Emily, you didn't even tell me you invited him. I had to find out by seeing him walk into our backyard. I didn't think it was a big deal. You're being paranoid. I turned to face him, putting on my most reasonable expression. Owen cares about Ava. He wanted to celebrate with her. Why are you trying to make this weird? I'm not making anything weird. I'm asking my wife why she's keeping secrets from me. Secrets? I laughed, shaking my head. Nate, you're being ridiculous. I'm not keeping secrets. I'm trying to throw our daughter a nice party, and you're in here accusing me of… What exactly? Nate stared at me for a long moment. I don't know. That's what worries me. Well, figure it out on your own time. I have guests to take care of. I pushed past him toward the back door. And try not to ruin Ava's party with your paranoia. I rejoined the party with a bright smile, but I could feel Nate's eyes on me for the rest of the afternoon. Linda kept glancing between us with concern, and I noticed her pulling Nate aside for a quiet conversation by the fence. The party continued smoothly. The kids played games, ate cake, and ran around the backyard screaming with sugar-fueled joy. Owen was charming with the other parents, helping clean up spilled juice and entertaining the children with funny voices. Several of the moms commented on how helpful and funny he was. You're lucky to have such a good friend, my coworker Jessica said, watching Owen help Ava open her presents. My ex-boyfriend won't even return my texts about splitting our old utility bills. Owen's special, I said, meaning it more than I should have. He's always been there for me. As the party wound down and guests started leaving, I found myself in the kitchen with Owen, packing leftover cake into containers. Nate was outside helping parents load tired children into car seats. Great party, Renee, Owen said, using the old nickname that always made me smile. Ava had a blast. Thanks for coming. It means a lot to her. And to me. I looked up at him, suddenly very aware that we were alone. Any time, you know that. Owen's voice was softer now, more intimate. I've missed this, being part of your life. Owen, I started, but then Nate walked through the back door carrying empty cups and plates. He stopped short when he saw us standing close together by the counter. Owen was holding a container of cake, and I was reaching for the lid, our hands nearly touching. Sorry, Nate said stiffly. Didn't mean to interrupt. You're not interrupting anything, I said quickly, stepping back from Owen. We're just cleaning up. Owen cleared his throat. I should head out. Thanks again for including me, Emily. Tell Ava I said goodbye. He handed me the cake container, his fingers brushing mine briefly. After Owen left, Nate and I finished cleaning up in tense silence. Ava was exhausted from the excitement and fell asleep on the couch while we worked. Linda and Paul had gone home, but not before Linda gave me a long, searching look that made my skin crawl. Good party, Nate said finally, stacking chairs in the garage. Yeah, Ava loved it. I wiped down the kitchen counters, trying to think of something else to say. Owen seems comfortable here. I froze. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just an observation. Nate picked up the trash bag full of paper plates and cups. He knows where everything is. The bathroom, the kitchen. Like he's been here before. He has been here before, Nate, for barbecues. You were there too. Right. Nate tied off the trash bag. I'm going to put Ava to bed. As he carried our sleeping daughter upstairs, I stood alone in the kitchen, my hands shaking slightly as I finished cleaning. I told myself Nate was just being paranoid, that there was nothing wrong with having Owen at the party. But deep down, I knew I was walking a dangerous line. I also knew I wasn't ready to step back from it. Monday morning at the office, I couldn't concentrate on the insurance claims piled on my desk. All weekend, Nate had been polite but distant, speaking to me only when necessary, and spending most of his time playing with Ava or working in his home office. During my lunch break, I found Jessica in the break room heating up leftover pasta. "How was the rest of your weekend?" she asked, stirring her food. "You seemed a little stressed when I left the party." "Oh, you know how it is. Nate gets weird sometimes." I opened my yogurt and sat down across from her. He was upset that I invited Owen without discussing it with him first. Jessica raised an eyebrow. "That's the good-looking guy who was helping with the kids, your college friend." "Ex-boyfriend, technically, but that was a lifetime ago. We're just friends now." I took a bite of yogurt, trying to sound casual. "Nate's being paranoid about nothing." Jessica looked thoughtful. "I mean, I can kind of see his point. If my husband invited his ex-girlfriend to our kid's birthday party without telling me, I might be a little confused too." "It's not like that," I said quickly. "Owen's practically family. Ava loves him. He's been to our house before." "If you say so, but maybe you should talk to Nate about it. Clear the air." I shrugged. "There's nothing to clear. He needs to get over his insecurity issues." That afternoon, I got a text from Sam. "Coffee after work? I want to hear about the party drama." We met at our usual cafe downtown, a trendy place with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. Sam was already there when I arrived, scrolling through her phone and looking annoyed. "So what happened with Nate?" she asked as soon as I sat down. "You sounded upset when you called yesterday." "He's being ridiculous," I said, launching into the whole story. "Owen came to Ava's party, was perfectly nice to everyone, helped clean up, and Nate acted like he was some kind of threat." Sam rolled her eyes. "Men are so insecure. Owen's obviously moved on. You're married with a kid. What does Nate think is going to happen?" "Exactly. And Owen's great with Ava. She calls him Uncle Owen. He brings her thoughtful gifts, remembers her favorite books. Nate should be grateful that she has another positive male figure in her life." "Right. And it's not like you're sneaking around with the guy. You invited him to a kid's birthday party in your backyard with 30 other people." Sam sipped her latte. "Nate's being controlling." I felt a wave of relief hearing Sam validate my feelings. "That's what I told him. I said he was being paranoid." "Good. Don't let him make you feel guilty for having friends. You're allowed to have a life outside of your marriage." "Thank you. Finally, someone with sense." I stirred my coffee, feeling better than I had all weekend. I was starting to think I was crazy. "You're not crazy. Nate's just... I don't know. Maybe he's going through something at work. Men get weird when they're stressed about other stuff." The next morning at the office, I found myself telling the story to 2 other co-workers during our morning coffee break. I didn't mean to gossip, but when they asked about my weekend, the words just came out. "So now he's giving me the silent treatment," I concluded, shaking my head. "Over a children's birthday party." "That's rough," said Maria from accounting. "My husband did something similar last year when I went to dinner with my college roommate. Turned out he was feeling insecure about his job situation." "Maybe that's it," I said thoughtfully. "Nate's been working a lot lately. Maybe he's taking his stress out on me." Men do that, agreed Linda from HR. They can't handle their own problems, so they create drama at home. I felt vindicated hearing their support. It confirmed what I already suspected. Nate was being unreasonable, and I was the victim of his misplaced anxiety. That evening, Nate was helping Ava with a puzzle when I got home from work. They looked up when I walked into the living room, and Ava ran over to hug me. "Mommy, Daddy and I are making a castle." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I kissed the top of her head and looked at Nate. "How was your day?" "Fine," he said without looking at me. "Dinner's in the oven. Should be ready in 20 minutes. "Thank you." I sat down on the couch, watching them work on the puzzle together. Nate was patient with Ava, helping her find the right pieces and celebrating when she got them in place. He was a good father. I'd never doubted that. But lately, I'd been wondering if being a good father was enough. If being reliable and steady was enough. Owen made me laugh. He remembered things about me that Nate seemed to have forgotten. He made me feel interesting, attractive, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down and saw Owen's name. "Had a great time at the party yesterday. Ava's lucky to have such an amazing mum. Hope we can catch up soon." I smiled, quickly typing back. "She had a wonderful time. Thanks for making it special." "Anytime. Maybe we could grab coffee this week. I'd love to hear how the new job is going." I hesitated, glancing at Nate. He was focused on the puzzle, not paying attention to me. "I'll let you know. Things are a bit crazy right now. Of course, no pressure. Just miss talking to you." I deleted the conversation and put my phone away, but I couldn't stop thinking about Owen's message. He missed talking to me. When was the last time Nate had said something like that? During dinner, Ava chatted about her day at kindergarten while Nate and I ate in silence. After we put her to bed, I tried to start a conversation. "Nate, about this weekend." "I don't want to talk about it," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "But we should. We can't just ignore what happened." "What happened, Emily? You invited your ex-boyfriend to our daughter's party without telling me. When I asked about it, you called me paranoid and told me I was ruining the party. What exactly do you want to discuss?" I felt a flash of anger. "I want to discuss why you can't trust me, why you assume the worst about everything I do. I never said I didn't trust you. You didn't have to say it. It was written all over your face." I sat down next to him on the couch. "Owen is my friend, that's all. I'm sorry I didn't mention inviting him, but I honestly didn't think it was a big deal." Nate closed his laptop and looked at me. "It's a big deal to me." "Why?" "Because—" He ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated. "Because you light up when you talk about him. Because our daughter calls him Uncle Owen. Because you've been different lately, distant, and now I know why." "Different how?" "You're always on your phone. You work late more often. You seem, I don't know, like you're somewhere else even when you're here." I felt a stab of guilt, but I pushed it away. "I've been working on a big case. You know that. And I'm not always on my phone." "Aren't you?" We stared at each other for a long moment. I wanted to reassure him, to make things right between us, but I also felt defensive. I hadn't done anything wrong. Having coffee with an old friend wasn't cheating. Texting wasn't cheating. Nate was being unreasonable. "I think you should talk to someone," I said finally. "About your jealousy issues." Nate's face went blank. "My jealousy issues?" "Yes. It's not healthy, Nate. It's affecting our marriage." He stared at me for another moment, then opened his laptop again. "I'll keep that in mind." I went to bed feeling frustrated and misunderstood. As I lay in the dark listening to Nate's steady breathing, I thought about Owen's text message. He wanted to catch up, to hear about my life. He missed talking to me. Maybe coffee wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. 3 days later, I found myself standing outside Owen's fitness studio at 7 in the evening, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. I'd texted him that morning, saying I could meet for coffee, and he'd suggested we skip the cafe and talk at his gym instead. He said he needed to stay late to finish some paperwork, but we could chat while he worked. The studio was in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Through the large windows, I could see rows of exercise equipment and motivational posters on the walls. Owen had built something impressive here. I pushed through the front door, hearing the chime announce my arrival. The main workout area was empty, but I could hear music coming from the back office. "Emily," Owen's voice called out, "back here." I found him sitting behind a desk covered with invoices and membership forms, wearing a black t-shirt that showed off his muscular arms. He looked up when I entered and smiled that easy, confident smile that had always made my knees weak. "Thanks for coming by. I know this isn't exactly Starbucks." He gestured around the small office. "But I've got coffee and it's private." "It's fine. This place is amazing, Owen. You should be proud." "Thanks. It's been a lot of work, but I love it." He stood up and moved to a small coffee maker in the corner. "How do you take it? Still cream and sugar?" I was touched that he remembered. "Yes, please." He handed me a mug and sat back down, gesturing for me to take the chair across from his desk. "So, tell me about everything. How's the new position at the insurance company?" We talked easily for the next hour, the conversation flowing like no time had passed at all. Owen remembered details about my work that I'd mentioned months ago, asked thoughtful questions about my goals and frustrations. It felt wonderful to have someone's complete attention, to feel heard and understood. "You seem different," Owen said eventually, leaning back in his chair and studying my face. "More confident than you were in college. Success suits you." I felt myself blush. "Thank you. I feel like I'm finally hitting my stride professionally." "And personally? You seem happy with Nate and Ava." I hesitated, not sure how to answer. "Ava's wonderful. She's the best thing that ever happened to me." "And Nate? Nate's a good man, a good father." I took a sip of coffee, avoiding Owen's eyes. "Marriage is complicated, you know. It's not like the movies." "How so?" I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't expected. Sometimes I feel invisible, like I'm just going through the motions of being a wife and mother, but nobody really sees me. Does that make sense? Owen leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "Perfect sense. You're an amazing woman, Emily. You always were. If Nate doesn't see that, he's an idiot." "He's not an idiot. He's just... We've been together for 7 years. The excitement wears off, I guess." "It doesn't have to." The way he said it made my heart race. I looked around the office, suddenly very aware that we were alone in the building. "Owen, I'm sorry, I don't mean to overstep. It's just hard to watch someone I care about settle for less than she deserves." "I'm not settling." "Aren't you?" He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against it so he was closer to me. "When was the last time someone made you feel special? Really special?" I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. When was the last time Nate had complimented me on something other than dinner or keeping the house clean? When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Owen was looking at me right now? "I should go," I said, standing up quickly. "Ava will be wondering where I am." "Of course, I didn't mean to keep you so long." Owen walked me to the front door, his hand briefly touching my lower back as he reached around me to unlock it. "Thanks for coming by. It was really good to see you." "You too." I stepped outside into the cool evening air, feeling flustered and confused. "Emily," Owen called after me, "if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here. You know that, right?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and hurried to my car. The drive home took 15 minutes, but I sat in the driveway for another 10, trying to collect myself. I felt guilty, but I also felt more alive than I had in months. Owen saw me as more than just a wife and mother. He saw me as a woman worth pursuing, worth caring about. My phone rang, making me jump. Nate's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound normal. "Hey, where are you? Ava's asking for you." I looked at the clock on my dashboard and realized it was almost 8:30. Sorry, I got held up at work. I'm just pulling into the driveway now. Okay, she's in her pajamas, but she wanted to wait for you to read her bedtime story. I'll be right in. I hung up and sat for another moment, hating myself for lying, but not knowing what else to do. How could I explain that I'd spent the evening at my ex-boyfriend's gym, talking about my marriage and feeling more connected to him than I had to my husband in years? Inside, Ava was waiting in her bedroom with a pile of books, her hair damp from her bath, and her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. Mommy, you're home. Daddy said you were working late again. I was, sweetheart, but I'm here now. I kissed her forehead and settled onto her bed. What are we reading tonight? As I read about princesses and dragons, I tried to focus on Ava's sleepy voice asking questions about the story, but part of my mind kept drifting back to Owen's office, to the way he'd looked at me when he said I deserved better. After Ava fell asleep, I found Nate in the living room watching the news. He looked up when I entered, but didn't smile. Long day? He asked. Yeah, the Morrison case is more complicated than we thought. The lie came easily, which scared me. You should eat something. I saved you a plate. Thanks, but I grabbed something at the office. Another lie. I'm going to take a shower and head to bed. Emily? Nate's voice stopped me at the bottom of the stairs. Yeah? Is everything okay? You seem, I don't know, distracted lately. For a moment I considered telling him the truth, about feeling invisible, about needing more than our routine life together, about Owen making me remember who I used to be. But looking at Nate's concerned face, I couldn't find the words. I'm fine, just tired. Okay, good night. Good night. In the shower, I let the hot water wash away the guilt and confusion, at least temporarily. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd had coffee with an old friend. We'd talked. That was all. But as I lay in bed next to my sleeping husband, I couldn't stop thinking about Owen's question. When was the last time someone had made me feel special? And I couldn't stop wondering what would have happened if I hadn't left the gym when I did. 2 weeks after my visit to Owen's gym, I decided to organize a family dinner to prove to everyone, including myself, that everything was normal. I invited my parents, Sam and her boyfriend, and Nate's parents. If I could get through one pleasant evening with all the important people in our lives, maybe the weird tension would finally dissipate. I spent Saturday morning cleaning the house and preparing an elaborate meal: roast chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and homemade dinner rolls. Ava helped by setting the table with our good china and arranging flowers in a vase. Why are we using the fancy plates, Mommy? She asked, carefully placing forks next to each setting. Because we're having a special dinner with the whole family, I told her, adjusting the centerpiece. Grandma and Grandpa Harper are coming, and Grandma and Grandpa Valeska too. And Uncle Sam's boyfriend? Yes, and Sam's boyfriend too. I smiled at her excitement. Ava loved big family gatherings, loved being the center of attention from all the adults who doted on her. Nate emerged from his home office around noon, looking surprised at all the activity. I forgot everyone was coming tonight. I reminded you 3 times this week, I said, a little sharper than I intended. Right, sorry. What can I do to help? Just keep Ava occupied while I finish cooking, and maybe shower and change. Your parents will be here at 5. At exactly 5 o'clock, Linda and Paul Harper arrived with a bottle of wine and a small gift for Ava. Linda looked elegant as always in a navy blue dress and pearls, her silver hair perfectly styled. She kissed Ava's cheek and complimented the table setting, but I noticed her scanning the living room with sharp eyes. Everything looks lovely, dear, she said to me, though her smile seemed forced. My parents arrived 15 minutes later, my father carrying 2 bottles of wine and my mother with a homemade apple pie. Paul Valeska was a quiet man who'd worked as an electrician for 30 years before retiring, and he'd always been kind to Nate. My mother had died 3 years earlier, so it was just Dad now, looking a little lost without her, but trying to stay involved in our lives. Sam and her boyfriend, Derek, were the last to arrive, fashionably late as always. Sam looked beautiful in a red dress that showed off her figure, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. Derek was a nice enough guy, though I sometimes wondered if Sam was settling for him. "Sorry we're late," Sam announced, hugging me tightly. Derek couldn't decide what wine to bring. "Any wine is good wine," my father said with a chuckle, accepting Derek's offering of a decent Chardonnay. We gathered in the living room for drinks and appetizers, while I put the finishing touches on dinner. The conversation flowed easily at first. Paul and my father discussed baseball. Sam entertained everyone with stories from her job at the marketing firm, and Ava showed off her latest artwork to anyone who would pay attention. But I noticed Linda watching me carefully, and when I caught her eye, she didn't look away. "Emily," she said during a lull in conversation, "I heard you had quite the birthday party for Ava a few weeks ago." My stomach tightened. "Yes, it was wonderful. Ava had a great time." "I'm sure she did, though I was surprised to hear that Owen Sutter was there." Linda's tone was conversational, but there was steel underneath it. The room went quiet. Sam looked confused. My father raised an eyebrow, and Nate's jaw tightened. "Owen's an old friend," I said carefully. "He's very fond of Ava." "An old friend," Linda repeated. "That's interesting. Margaret Collins mentioned she saw your car at his gym last week. After hours." My heart started pounding. Margaret Collins was one of Linda's bridge partners, a busybody who lived downtown near Owen's studio. "I stopped by to say hello. He was working late." "I see." Linda took a sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving my face. "It's nice that you've maintained such a close friendship with your ex-boyfriend." "Mother," Nate said quietly, but Linda ignored him. "What's going on?" Sam asked, looking between Linda and me with growing concern. "Nothing's going on," I said quickly, forcing a laugh. "Linda's making something out of nothing. Owen and I are friends. That's all." "Friends who meet after hours at his gym," Linda said. "Friends who have intimate conversations at children's birthday parties." "Intimate conversations?" I felt my face getting hot. "We talked about Ava's presence and the weather. If that's intimate to you, then I don't know what to say." "Ladies," my father interjected gently, "perhaps we should—" "No, Dad, it's fine." I stood up, my hands shaking with anger. Apparently, Linda has some concerns about my friendships that she'd like to air in front of everyone. "I have concerns about my son's marriage," Linda said calmly, "and about my granddaughter's stability." "My marriage is fine," I snapped, "and Ava's stability isn't threatened by her mother having friends." "Emily," Nate said, his voice warning me to back down. "No, Nate, I'm tired of this. Your mother has never liked me, and now she's using my friendship with Owen as an excuse to attack me in front of my family." "I'm not attacking you," Linda said. "I'm trying to understand why a married woman with a young daughter is spending her evenings alone with her ex-boyfriend. Because maybe I need someone to talk to who doesn't interrogate me about every move I make." The words came out louder than I intended, and I saw Ava look up from her coloring book with worried eyes. "Mommy?" Ava's small voice cut through the tension. "Why is everyone yelling?" "Nobody's yelling, sweetheart," Sam said quickly, moving to sit next to Ava on the floor. "The grown-ups are just having a discussion." "A discussion about what?" Ava asked. "About nothing important," I said, shooting Linda a furious look. "Just adult stuff that doesn't concern little girls." "Why don't we eat?" my father suggested. "Emily's worked hard on this meal. We shouldn't let it get cold." We moved to the dining room in uncomfortable silence. I served the food with shaking hands while everyone made stilted conversation about safe topics, the weather, Ava's school, Derek's new job, but the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Halfway through the main course, Linda spoke up again. "Nate tells me you've been working late quite a bit recently." I looked at Nate, feeling betrayed. "Sometimes, when cases require it. Of course, though it's interesting that your late nights seem to coincide with Owen's schedule." That's enough, Nate said firmly. Mother, I asked you not to do this tonight. Do what? Linda asked innocently. Ask questions about my daughter-in-law's behavior. Make accusations, Nate corrected. I'm not making accusations. I'm making observations. Observations based on gossip from your bridge club, I said bitterly. Observations based on my son coming to me worried about his marriage. The words hit me like a slap. I looked at Nate, who was staring at his plate with a red face. You talked to your mother about our marriage? Emily, you discussed our private business with her. You weren't talking to me, Nate said quietly. Every time I tried to bring up my concerns, you shut me down or called me paranoid. So you ran to Mommy instead. That's not fair, isn't it? I threw my napkin on the table and stood up. You couldn't handle talking to your wife, so you complained to your mother, and now she thinks she has the right to ambush me at my own dinner table. Nobody's ambushing anyone, Linda said. We're having a conversation about behavior that affects this entire family. My behavior affects this family. What about Nate's behavior? What about his inability to trust his own wife? What about his jealousy and paranoia? Emily, stop, Sam said urgently, glancing at Ava, who was watching the adults with wide, frightened eyes. But I couldn't stop. Weeks of guilt and frustration and feeling attacked came pouring out. I have done nothing wrong, nothing. I've been a good wife and a good mother, and I'm tired of being treated like a criminal because I have a friend who happens to be male. I'm tired of walking on eggshells in my own home, tired of having my every move questioned and analyzed. Then maybe you should examine why your moves need to be questioned, Linda said coldly. Maybe you should mind your own business. Emily, my father said sharply, that's enough. I looked around the table at all the faces staring at me, some shocked, some disappointed, some angry. Ava was crying quietly, and Sam was trying to comfort her. You know what? You're right, that's enough. I grabbed my purse from the counter. I'm going for a drive. When I come back, I expect everyone except my daughter and my husband to be gone. I headed for the door, ignoring Nate calling my name. Mummy, don't go. Ava's voice broke my heart, but I couldn't stay in that room for another second. I drove aimlessly for an hour, my hands shaking and tears streaming down my face. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Owen's gym. The lights were on in his office, and I could see his silhouette through the window. Before I could talk myself out of it, I walked inside. Emily, what are you doing here? Owen looked up from his computer, immediately concerned when he saw my face. What's wrong? Everything, I said, and started crying again. He came around the desk and pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. I stayed at Owen's gym for 2 hours that night, crying on his shoulder and telling him everything that had happened at dinner. He listened without judgment, handed me tissues, and told me I deserved better than being attacked by my in-laws and unsupported by my husband. When I finally went home, the house was dark except for the porch light. Everyone had left, and Nate was waiting for me in the living room, still wearing his dinner clothes, but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. How's Ava? I asked, dropping my purse by the door. Upset. She didn't understand why everyone was fighting or why you left. His voice was quiet, controlled. I told her you needed some air and that everything would be okay. I'm sorry she had to see that. Your mother shouldn't have. Don't. Nate held up his hand. Don't blame my mother for what happened tonight. She ambushed me, Nate, in front of my family. She asked you about Owen. You're the one who lost control. I stared at him, feeling like he'd slapped me. Lost control? Your mother accused me of having an affair in front of my father and my sister, and you think I lost control? Did she accuse you of having an affair, or did she ask why you're spending time alone with your ex-boyfriend? It's the same thing. Is it? The way he asked the question made my stomach drop. What's that supposed to mean? Nate stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our dark backyard. I've been thinking a lot over the past few weeks, about us, about what's been happening. Nate, let me finish. He turned back to me, and I was shocked by how tired he looked. You're right that I've been jealous. You're right that I've been questioning your friendship with Owen. But I don't think I'm being paranoid. You are being paranoid. Owen and I are just friends. Are you? He pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. Because I've been paying attention, Emily. You've worked late 12 times in the past month. I called your office 3 of those nights, and you'd already left. My heart started pounding. I sometimes stop for coffee or run errands. On the nights you said you were working late, Nate's voice was getting harder. You lied to me, Emily, multiple times. I didn't lie, I just didn't mention every stop I made. Where did you go? I couldn't answer. How could I tell him I'd been meeting Owen for coffee, for walks, for long conversations that made me feel more alive than I'd felt in years? Where did you go? Nate repeated. Sometimes I met Owen for coffee. To talk. To talk about what? Life, work, nothing important. Nothing important, Nate laughed bitterly. Your marriage wasn't important enough to mention these coffee dates to your husband, but they were important enough to lie about. I wasn't lying. You were lying. For the first time, Nate raised his voice. Every time you said you were working late when you were really with Owen, you were lying. Every time I asked if something was going on and you said no, you were lying. I felt tears starting again. It's not what you think. What do I think, Emily? You think I'm having an affair. Are you? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to say no, to reassure him, to fix this mess I'd created. But the truth was more complicated than that. Not physically, I said finally. Nate's face went white. Not physically. What does that mean? It means I haven't slept with him. I haven't kissed him. I haven't done anything physical. But, I closed my eyes, knowing I was about to destroy everything. But I have feelings for him, and I think he has feelings for me. The silence that followed was deafening. When I opened my eyes, Nate was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. How long? He asked. How long what? How long have you had feelings for him? I don't know. Since he moved back to town, maybe. Since we started talking again. 2 years. It's not like I planned it, Nate. It just happened. It just happened. He ran his hands through his hair. You've been in love with another man for 2 years, and it just happened. I'm not in love with him. What would you call it? I didn't have an answer for that. Nate walked to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo of the 3 of us from last Christmas. Ava was sitting on his lap, and I was leaning against his shoulder, all of us smiling at the camera. I keep looking at this picture, Nate said quietly, trying to remember when you stopped looking at me like this. I confessed everything, the coffee dates, texts, how Owen made me feel alive. Are you in love with him? Nate asked. I don't know. Do you want to be with me? I want to be with you. That's not the same thing. Then came the question that destroyed me. Is Ava mine? Of course. She has green eyes. Neither of us do. Nate handed me an envelope. DNA test. Tomorrow. I stared at the paperwork, realizing my life had been crumbling for 2 years. Now I'd discover what it would cost me. The DNA results arrived Thursday morning. My hands shook signing for them. When Nate opened the envelope at lunch, his face went dark. 0% probability. I'm not Ava's father. She's still your daughter, I whispered. She's Owen's daughter. His voice was flat. You cheated 6 weeks before our wedding. One drunken mistake. That created a child who isn't mine. Please, we can work through this. You're calling Owen today. I've already filed for divorce. Later, telling 5-year-old Ava that Daddy wasn't her biological father broke us all. 6 months later, the judge's gavel ended my marriage. I'd built my life on lies. Now everything had fallen apart.